You good?
Blurry.
All right. Here in Marietta, Georgia, we have a recovery community organization that opened about 6 weeks ago to help people in recovery from drug addiction stay in recovery from drug addiction. In the about 5 weeks that this organization has been open, they have added 5 new pictures to the wall of those loved and lost. For those of us who are not in the world of addiction and recovery, this probably seems like a shocking reality, but to those of us who are actually in recovery, we know all too often that this is what happens. Losing 5 people in 5 weeks, it's all too common of a reality. Fact of the matter is, the United States is currently in the midst of the worst drug epidemic it has ever seen. In the past 4 decades, the United States has spent over $1 trillion fighting a war on drugs, and yet that has brought us here to having the most overdose deaths we've ever seen. So at what point do we recognize that this approach has failed us and we need to do something different? What we really need in this country is an attitude shift. We need to take the focus off the criminal justice system for addiction and shift it over to a public health system. That shift starts with us. I am a certified addiction and recovery empowerment specialist and also serve on the board of the agency I previously mentioned. I have dealt with hundreds of people who have dealt with addiction, and I have seen firsthand the difference it makes when we treat this as an illness that it is, rather than trying to punish a moral failing. Addiction rates have grown shockingly over the years. They're killing wonderful people who are full of potential, and we need a different approach. We need to encourage our politicians to change this legislation that we've kept for so long. But how do we do this? First of all, we need to understand what we are facing here. Addiction is not new in America, but in recent years it has grown to an epidemic. One drug in particular that has grown is heroin. Maggie Fox from NBC in 2015 reported that heroin usage has increased 63% in our nation, and overdose death rates have quadrupled from 2002 to 2013. At the organization I previously mentioned, somebody recently said that we are losing a generation. These words shocked me, but she was actually kind of right. I've seen more of my friends die in the last 3 years than I have ever seen. I've been to more funerals than both of my parents have their entire lives. And these people that we are losing, this generation, they're not worthless people. They were young, they are bright, they are full of potential. They would have the ability to change the world if only they could stay long enough to see it. The people that are affected too are also not limited by geography. Virtually no part of our nation has remained untouched by this epidemic. Almost every county has seen an increase of overdose deaths, according to the New York Times in 2016. In fact, our numbers are so high they actually they're almost mimicking the HIV epidemic at its highest. And while there's no geographic limitation, there's also no age limitation. The elderly, even children, that deal with addiction. It does not discriminate. And not only do just the addicts suffer, but families suffer too, as we know all too well. This seems hopeless, but there is a lot we can do. Unfortunately, it's not a quick fix or an easy fix, but there are steps we can take. I believe the most important is to shift the focus from a criminal justice standpoint to a public health standpoint. We need to offer treatment, most importantly, inpatient. We are not the first country to do something. We wouldn't be the first country to do something like this. In 2001, Portugal actually decriminalized all drugs up to a small amount. Instead of incarcerating people, they offered them inpatient treatment. In 10 years, addiction rates were actually less than half of what they were after changing this approach, according to Kane from Forbes in 2011. If we follow that example, we can see that legislation needs to change. We need to reduce jail time and expand access to treatment options, which would include rehab facilities, both inpatient and outpatient, therapy, and referrals to 12-step fellowships. We can't ourselves obviously change legislation, but we can advocate. We can talk to our state legislators, we can talk to our congressmen, we can talk to our politicians until our voices are heard. Now imagine what this nation would be like if we actually did something like this. We know it's possible. We've seen it in Portugal. If we can fix this problem, or at least start to address it, parents won't have to bury children like it's happening all too often. We won't have to lose our friends. But to ignore it, to not take action, to keep fighting this outdated war, and to keep following the approach that brought us to where we are today, the epidemic, this crisis, will only get worse. We need to change. We need to change our ways now, because this is something unlike we have ever seen. Overdose death rates are at their highest, and they're taking amazing people. But change is possible, as we've seen in Portugal. So what can you guys do? You can talk to your state legislators. In fact, in Atlanta in January, there's an Addiction and Recovery Awareness Day, where you can come face-to-face to your state representatives and your state legislators and advocate for change. Encourage them to shift away from punishment and shift towards treatment. This is an epidemic, but we can be the ones that end this problem, end this outdated war, and get these people help. Thank you very much.